Hi, everybody. We've got some exciting news and we need your help. We've got a new book that just came out today and we'd really like your support. The name of it is John F. Kennedy, Anti-Imperialist. And it is part of a series that we're doing. It's the first in a series, and if all goes well, we'll have some more books, but this is the first shot across the bow. Uh, Very important book. It talks about the real John F. Kennedy. He has been slandered tremendously by the right, obviously, who call him, a communist sympathizer and a traitor to the country. Yes, there are people that say that. There were certainly a lot of people around in the 1960s that said that. It was okay to call for the death of John F. Kennedy when he was president. A lot of right-wing lunatics were doing it. But then you have the people on the left, people like Noam Chomsky, who say, well, Kennedy was just part of the establishment and, he really wasn't a big deal and he wasn't really going to change anything. And this book calls bullshit on that. I'm not sure why Noam Chomsky feels the need to slur John F. Kennedy and try to attempt to diminish his contribution, but he and many, many, many other people from the left are doing the same thing. I think most sane, normal, decent Americans know that John F. Kennedy was trying to do something different, and they know that's the reason he was killed. You have to be a professional leftist or a professional right-wing character assassin, of which there are many. There are literally people that make their living writing trash about the Kennedy family and John F. Kennedy. So this book is a rare, rare, rare antidote, and we're to that. And we've focused on one particular element of Kennedy's agenda, which was he was an anti-imperialist. He was not into the United States being a global imperial power. Now, he was very clear about the country remaining strong and the country not giving in to the communist menace, which really was a menace. And actually, if you look around the United States, remains a menace to this day. So he wasn't soft on communism by any means, but he was not part of the imperialist empire agenda. Remember, he fired Allen Dulles, who was Mr. Coup and Assassination, who was running the CIA. But that's not all he did. And when you think of the thousands, apparently over 40,000 books have been written about the Kennedys and John F. Kennedy, not, and that includes the assassination books, but it's just not the assassination books. When you think about all the books that have been written about him, how many have highlighted this issue of the fact that he was fighting against imperialism? He did it as a congressman. He did it as a senator. Okay, we've got it in the book. Did you know this? I didn't really know it till I started learning about it this year. And surprisingly, I think there are some Kennedys that don't know about it. In fact, one of our motivations for writing this book was to put it in the hands of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. We do have the ability to put books right on his doorstep. And he knows who I am, that's for sure. And he needs to see this material. He absolutely needs to see this material. His uncle, who he's always talking about, and his father were not down with heavily militarized countries destroying indigenous resistance. Kennedy actually spoke on behalf of the Algerian resistance against the French in the 50s when the war was going on. I mean, he was out there. Now, the Oliver Stone movie, JFK, did mention something about Vietnam, but even that's been muddled ridiculously. And by the way, the guy that funded the JFK movie, um, arms dealer, one of the guys that was involved in helping the Israelis get the atomic bomb. Uh, yeah, so the narrative of the JFK movie may not have been as hard hitting as it should have been. By the way, one of the groups that Kennedy was outspoken against was the Zionist crazies. He put them on, as president, he put them on notice and told them, we need to see that nuclear facility you've got, because if you're developing weapons, you just got cut off from us. That's a telegram. We have it in the book. Have you ever heard of it before? Maybe you heard of it on Brass Check, but I'm certain 99.9% of the population has never heard of that telegram and all the correspondence between John F. and Robert F. Kennedy trying to bring the Zionist criminals into some kind of line. And of course, Kennedy got shot, and then his brother got shot. And the Israelis were allowed to go ahead by the U.S. government, because we're the ones that allowed them to do whatever they do. They were allowed to create a nuclear weapons program. They also have been allowed to evade the normal um, lobby registration laws. Everybody on this planet, if you're representing another a foreign nation and spending money on it, not just talking, but spending money on it, you've got to register as a foreign lobbyist. You got to report, where is your money coming from? Who are you giving it to? Somehow Israel got a free pass on that. Robert F. Kennedy, with his brother John, were fighting that. That's going to come in another book. But the core of this book shows that Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, was talking against America being a bully, an imperialist, empire building, coup staging, assassination staging bully. And he was talking about this when he was a young congressman in uh, Massachusetts. And when he was a senator, we have the speeches, the actual speeches that he gave. And we have some other important speeches in the book too. And then I write an introduction and a commentary. We have a chronology. Um, we put John F. Kennedy in a new light, which, given how many books there are, it's not easy to do, but it was easy to do because for whatever reason, everybody is ignoring this very clear aspect of his character and his agenda. In the JFK movie, they said, well, he was talking about maybe withdrawing troops from Vietnam. In the 1950s, he was talking about the fact that you couldn't win a war in Vietnam. All right. So, he had inherited this mess from Eisenhower. He was doing what he could to try to stem the tide of some real problems that were going on there. He had the memorandum that he wanted to take 1,000 advisors out, and that he hoped to have all U.S. troops out by the end of, I think it was 1964. And then, of course, well, that didn't happen. He got murdered. And Johnson, the same guy that permitted the Israelis to shoot up a U.S. Navy boat and kill dozens of seamen and get away with it, came in and let the Israeli Zionists, the Zionist extremists is really what they should be called, allowed them to go ahead with their nuclear weapons. And Johnson was the first president in American history to send military aid to Israel. We had sent them food aid, we had sent them financial aid, but we never sent them weapons until Johnson came in and ramped that up. He also ramped up the Vietnam War. All these things should be seen holistically, right, as a picture. We had one president that was on on the Zionist extremist case very publicly. He wasn't shy about it. These weren't, discreet conversations. These were public telegrams. He was also working to get the United States out of Vietnam, something that he'd been talking about since the 50s, right? He gets shot, and all of a sudden, it's a free-for-all. Israel's doing whatever it wants with its nuclear weapon program. They're getting all kinds of arms from Johnson, and coups are going on left and right. Quite a bad scene. So anyway, the name of the book is John F. Kennedy, Anti-Imperialist, and you can go to I forget that this thing's so new I don't even remember, but you can go to Amazon. We've got the link. I have to say, this Amazon thing, I know a lot of people don't like to buy from them. I agree with you. I don't know what else to say. If you want to come here and set up a whole publishing company with, relationships with printers and financing and shipping and all that, which is a full-time job, come on, and I'm not going to pay you, because these books don't make any money. Although I will say this, that What the Nurses Saw has paid for itself, which is kind of miraculous. But every book you've seen we put out has been a money loser for us. But it's okay because the books are out there. and they're getting read and they're changing minds. So what we need from Brass Check subscribers is get at least one copy. You might get two or three. This is crunch week, right? We just launched the book just came out right now today. So we have a week to become designated as best new book in this category, this category, this category, this category. These things make a lot of difference. If we start winning sales prizes in the first week in the new releases section, we get a little bit of algorithmic love from the demons at Amazon, and we might get some more sales. We're also going to reach out to our podcasting friends. If you've got, a direct line to any podcaster, let them know this book exists. This is a really, really important book. It puts John F. Kennedy in a brand new light. It puts the history and trajectory of the United States in a brand new light. We did not have to be the world's bully. That was not carved in stone. We did not have to be the country supporting genocide. That is something that, frankly, is the result of the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And we're going to make the point in the series, but this book is the first piece of the series. It's really important to see that Kennedy, he even used the word anti-imperialist. Like, when do you hear that anymore in the news media, or even in the left doesn't even talk about anti-imperialism anymore. He used the word. He basically, bottom line, he said it was a disgrace for our country that fought a revolution to become free and independent, to be supporting the enslavement of other people around the world by colonial powers. That was his expressed statement. So how somebody like Noam Chomsky can say, he's just a member of the establishment and he didn't really make any difference. He wouldn't have made any difference. Well, you know what? Who knows who's ever going to make a difference? He was trying. And the other part of this is he was aware that he was putting himself at risk, even physical risk, and yet he persisted anyway. So a lot of people in the business of slandering John F. Kennedy, and this book is an antidote to that. And we also want to put it, and we produced this book largely to put it in the hands of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. so he can see that his uncle would not have been on board with the Zionist extremists and the genocide they're committing in Palestine. This is not a Kennedy family value. I don't know that it will influence him, but I do know that at least for one split second, when he opens that box, he's going to see the book and the title. And he's probably, maybe, going to be curious enough to flip through it. And I think once he starts reading, he's going to have a whole different viewpoint and impression of his uncle and his father. By the way, I believe this is the day that Robert F. Kennedy was murdered. I could be wrong about that. We didn't plan the book to be released on this day. It gets released when it gets released. But if it is, it's kind of an interesting coincidence. But, were the Kennedy brothers perfect? Obviously not. You can point to me anybody that's perfect. Were they doing their best to reform the bad path this country was on? The assassinations, the coups, the government being in bed with organized crime. These were all things, the proliferation of nuclear weapons. These were all things the Kennedys were fighting overtly with all their might, and they made a lot of enemies, and that is probably, the reason they're not alive anymore. But rather than let these right-wing smear artists and these professional left-wing lunatics smear these good Americans, good loyal Americans that were willing to put it on the line for the highest values of our country. No American is interested in us running an empire and going to other countries and murdering people for oil or for strategic advantage. There's no decent American that actually believes that. And yet you would think that is what America is all about. But that is a reflection of the fact that these two young men that could have been, Kennedy had a good chance of being reelected. If he had been reelected, Robert could have been president. I mean, we might have had those guys in office straight through into the 70s. Instead, we got Nixon, and we got Gerald Ford, and we got Lyndon Johnson, And then we ended up with well, whatever. You see, and then it just degenerated further from there. Anyway, if you want to support Brass Check, and by the way, to all our supporters, wow, I really should be thanking you every day, because this, you can imagine, this is like work. This is like a full-time job. Uh, and Google cut us off at the knees. I don't really talk about this very often, but we don't use them anymore as an advertiser. They cut our revenue 95%. Not 9%, not 19%, not even 90%, 95%. So if we had been making $1, we were making a nickel, right? So we've had to, like we've had, it's not as fun financially as it had been. Um, so they're gone. So what are we replacing it with? Well, asking for direct help. And again, thank you to everybody that's doing it. Your money, I hope you know, is really well spent. But these books also help too. They cost us money, but they spread the word that we exist. It also spreads the word about the things that we're trying to get across. We're not, I've been doing this since 1997, right? This is not a Me Too podcast thing. Okay. There are certain fundamental things that people just don't know about what's going on in this world and how the world works. It's being held from them. And I'm very happy that this book is coming out because this is one of the keystones of the whole situation. We had a president in the early 1960s who had a long record of being outspoken against the U.S. as a thug bully nation. And unfortunately, we've had people since then, after he was murdered, who are on board with that, invading Iraq, supporting the destruction of Syria, letting the Zionist extremists run wild in Gaza. This is not America. Unfortunately, we've been taken over. So we need to remember the guy and remember him clearly and know what he said. I think nobody even knows what he said anymore. But we've got the speeches. They're all in the book. I have some commentary and some introductory material. We have a chronology so you can see how all these things fit together. What was the country like before Kennedy? What was the country like during Kennedy? And what happened after Kennedy? And it's really clear. So Noam Chomsky, often has interesting things to say. It is very weird that he was friendly with Jeffrey Epstein. That is really weird. Look it up. And he makes no apologies about it. But he's dead wrong about John F. Kennedy. Kennedy was a great American, and he was a person that was putting it very clearly on the line that we should be someone partnering with other countries, lifting up the poor countries, not battering them down and not robbing them on behalf of various nefarious interests. So the book is John F. Kennedy, Anti-Imperialist. Please get one copy. If you're able to get two, bring one to your library. Maybe they'll put that one in the library. You might have some friends, that are Kennedy, remember President Kennedy. You might let them know about the book, even if you can't buy a case of them. And I'm serious about buying a case, because what that does is it gives us a great chance of winning the sales records, and then we get these little I know it seems silly, but we get the badge bestseller. People buy bestsellers. They don't buy obscure books that nobody else is buying. That's just the way human beings are. Also, we are hoping, hadn't thought about this when I was working on it. I was just working on it because it was important. There are a lot of people interested in John F. Kennedy, even if they're not interested in all this other stuff. And they're interested in the assassination. And I'm going to leave it on this note. Rather than spend 10,000 hours reviewing the forensics of the shooting, how about trying to understand why he was shot? And once you understand why he was shot, you'll understand who was behind it. And that's something that we have in this book. It's something that we're going to have in the series. The other two books that are going to, we got one more book coming out and then a third book that's kind of related, but anyway, it's a long story. But yeah, so, was the shooter here? Was he there? How about why they killed him? It's really clear once you get John F. Kennedy anti-imperialist, it's really clear why they killed him. I don't think any book has ever made it clearer. And it's, I got to tell you this, guys, it's a little weird that there's thousands of books out there about Kennedy and nobody gets into why they killed the guy. Think about that. Think about that. We got guys that have, YouTube channels that are just JFK assassination all day and all night. And it's interesting stuff. Ferry and Officer Tippit so it's all interesting stuff. All right. But why was he murdered? Why? Why? That's the question. And this book answers it like no other book. So please at least get one copy. Um, if you can, get a copy for yourself and your library, right? If one out of two people, if 1 out of 10 brass check people who buy the book were to buy an extra copy, that would make a huge difference. Just that little thing there. If you can buy multiple copies, that would be great too. The time to do it is now, though, right? The starting gun has gone off. We got a week to rack up our numbers. If we get good numbers, we're going to get all kinds of badges and, best-selling new release in this category, number one. I mean, this makes a huge difference. And we're hoping the $1 Million Podcasters will pay attention. Not counting on it, but maybe some of our friendly podcasters will pay attention. And you can help that too by getting the book, because if you get the book, it encourages other people to get it. People talk it up, and the word gets somehow through the iron curtain of the $1 Million Podcasters that there's an important idea out there. And that important idea out there was Kennedy was an avowed anti-imperialist. He did not want the United States to be an oppressive empire. He wanted us to partner, to compete fairly, and to help the poorer countries raise themselves up. And I think for that reason is probably all you need to understand when you try to understand why was this man murdered. And once you know why he was murdered, it's pretty clear to know who did it. So this has been Brass Check. Again, to our supporters, thank you very much. Buying this book is a great way to support us, and I appreciate that too.